Oh, welcome, my
Hey,
people. We have a hit right now. Don't we have a hit? Talk to him, man. Don't we have a hit?
I saw at least 50 links to the podcast last week, and we've been
Right.
holding steady at that number. We had 100 plus the first one, so we're trying to get back to that.
Yes, sir.
So, yeah, people like football.
Hey, they love football, man. And I don't know something about our dynamic, but if y'all don't know now, you do know. Welcome back to the big broadcast. I think this is episode 34. This is the football edition. All our football fans, our football family, we rock with y'all. We're going to give you another 40 minutes of pure fire, pure heat. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we just got to start it off, man. I'm proud of what we're doing. Let's keep it rolling. Let's keep the good times rolling. Something that I wanted to discuss, right, before we get really, really into it, right? Last week, right after we finished our podcast, right? It was Bengals versus Miami versus the Dolphins. That Tua hit, man, it was not really on our list of topics, but I want to get into that Tua hit. How did you feel about that, man? I was like, when I saw it, man, I was like, damn, man, this could end a career, man, because this is
They
two
whipped him.
concussions in 4, maybe 5 days.
Yeah, they whipped him around like a rag dog. It was unfortunate the way he landed, but what I really feel like is that we got to stop bigging people up specifically on this podcast, because that's like, it's like we were
Right?
just talking about how great he was looking, and like 3 quarters later it was Teddy Bridgewater time. So I was just like, we got to stop like bigging these guys up.
Like
Cordell Patterson, the other guy we talked
Cordell
about,
Patterson, we're talking about him too.
guy's on IR this week, right? So I'm starting to feel like
You remember a few podcasts ago we are talking about Amon Ra, right? And then the next week he was out.
TJ Watt, like we're not
TJ
getting a good
Watt.
reputation here.
Bro, we're cursed, man. We're cursed.
It's the nature of the NFL, right? You're hot one week and injured or not the next. So
That's the nature of the game, man. And for me, when I was just looking at that, that injury the Tua had, I was thinking about, you remember Luke Kuechly or his
sure,
name?
yeah,
Remember how
ferocious
he
middle linebacker for Carolina,
really great player, right? He
undersized too.
undersized, yes, he was a little skinnier frame, but he was very
Yeah, he was
effective.
like 6'1" instead of 6'4", and probably 215 instead of 245 or 250. But his thing was speed and the angles.
Very
Anyways,
fast.
yeah, I remember Luke Kuechly.
He was great in coverage too, a lot of interceptions, but he retired early because of concussions. Now, for me, I look at it like this. Tua, I think he's done for the season, man, and that's going to affect Miami as a team.
Well,
As we
he
talk about our
he's
week 4 reactions, man. What do you think, bro?
he's out under the concussion protocol. He's out for at least this week.
Mm-hmm.
They seem positive on his return. The report from the hospital that night, fortunately, was very good very quickly.
Right.
He was feeling everything, so he'll probably recover from this. But it's got to shake him a little bit, almost shake him like that hit that threw him to the ground. My goodness, like, yeah,
Right. And that's 2 major concussions in 2 weeks. I'm thinking in the back
yeah,
of my mind, they got to err through on the side of caution and give him some time. But that's going
yeah,
to affect how the AFC is going to look, because now you have Buffalo's going to run away with that division, bro.
yep,
Buffalo,
yep.
because now you have Mac Jones. He's done. Well, that they had to go to a third string quarterback, Zippers or Zuppers or whatever his name is. And the Jets surprisingly looked not bad, fam. Like, if we
Yeah.
just react to last week, my surprise of the week was kind of like the Jets a little bit. I was like, what the hell? Zach Wilson is slinging some balls right now. I'm like, whoa.
Yeah, tender topic for me as a Steelers fan, but
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
we,
That kind
we
of
were
hurts. I
saying
know.
earlier on, we were saying after week 2 that the Jets looked like they actually had some talent there,
Yes.
and that if they could get some consistent QB play, that they may surprise some people. And being at 2-2 after 4 games certainly qualifies as a surprise where the New York Jets are concerned out of the gate.
Nobody's was I wasn't expecting that. But
No.
also I wasn't expecting Kenny Pickett to throw 3 picks, man. Talk to us, man. As a Steelers fan, I know you have thoughts, man.
Can't spell can't spell pick without Pickett, I suppose, or you can't spell Pickett without pick. So that was the joke that was going around on media this week. I don't know what to tell you. He got thrown into the fire. We talked about at the earliest Pickett coming in after maybe week 6 if Trubisky wasn't being all he could be. So it happened sooner than that, as is wont to happen in the NFL with rookie QBs sometimes. My guess is that his learning curve just steepened considerably, and you're going to have more games like that. But on the other hand, he also showed just as much potential. He hit a couple of people downfield. Pickett to Pickens is looking like it might develop something as well. So yes, I said at the outset of this podcast in the first one that I was prepared for a 1982 type of Steelers season, and it's certainly looking like that or worse. I try to keep my thoughts just this just happens every generation if you're a Steelers fan.
What happened in '82, if you don't mind me asking?
Oh, that's when Terry Bradshaw retired, and they transitioned to a series of QBs, Mike Tomczak, guys like that, and it just took them a while before they really settled on a good quality QB again. It wasn't until the Chin showed up, Cordell Patterson, and their offensive lines improved before you really started to see it. But there was a yawning gap after Bradshaw retired for obvious reasons. It takes a while to learn the NFL game at QB.
Yeah, man, getting a competent guy under center, you know what I mean, especially for a legendary franchise, is hard, man, especially with this era of the NFL. I don't know what it is, but I'm going to say something maybe a little controversial, but I want to get your take on it, right? With so many teams that are 2-2, right? I think we're experiencing worse football. What do I mean? Bad coaching across the board and quarterback play that is not up there. What I mean by up there, I'm giving an example, right? The previous generation, we're talking about Peyton Manning, we're talking about Drew Brees, we're still talking about Tom Brady, we're talking about Aaron Rodgers, even Phillip Rivers, you know what I'm saying? We had some guys even the previous generation, when I started watching football personally, even Ben Roethlisberger, I'll put him in that. Yeah, I'll put him in that. And now we have a lot of young guys in the league who are very, very talented, but the quarterback play is lacking a little bit, man. Like what's going on, man? Even the coaching. I look at some of these coaches and some of their play calling. I'm like, yo, what are your thoughts? I think that's why we have so much parity right now, because it's a lot of
mediocrity.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Mediocrity. Yeah,
mediocrity creates parity, definitely.
You know what I'm saying? What are your thoughts on this, man?
Because what's the likelihood of having 32 elite quarterbacks banging it out every weekend, right? So that's the other thing that'll create parity, right? But if you were a betting man and you had to choose which of those scenarios was in play, let's go with the mediocrity. And let's not forget too, right? That set of quarterbacks that you're describing right there, not all of them, but at least 3 or 4 of them all came out of that historic 2003-2004 quarterback class, right? And Drew Brees came out, and I think just a couple of years before that. So I think there are 2 things that are possible here. That the quality of QB coaching at the college level isn't that great or fantastic, right?
Yes.
There's that possibility. Or the other possibility is that the defenses have been coached up so well, and they've got so many quick, lightning guys who move along the defensive lines these days, that it is much more challenging for a quarterback to hit that elite level, dare I use the word. So yes, I think there's a combination of factors, but you have to ask yourself, how well are they being developed at the college level?
I definitely believe it starts at the college level, even the high school level, and it could be an issue. I don't know if you know. I don't know if you ever watched the show. There's a show called Last Chance U on Netflix, right?
I know of it. Yes.
Yeah.
A couple times. Yeah.
I really enjoy it. There was this coach called John Brown, Coach JB, and he was very, very vulgar, very outlandish, but he won, and he got fired. Anyways, long story short, he has a podcast where he criticizes quarterbacks. He really goes off on Kyler Murray because he goes off on a lot of college coaches because he used to coach a JUCO, and he says that college quarterbacks are not being developed. They're just so talented and skilled naturally that they're going off their talent and skill instead of reading the playbook, going through their progressions. They're going off straight talent alone. And
Right.
this goes with a conversation about even, my own team, the Baltimore Ravens, how we lost to the Bills. You have Justin Tucker. I love John Harbaugh, man. One
Hmm.
of the greatest coaches, in the league. Was one of the
Yeah, but
best.
I think that loss was on him. If you want to get right to
It
the chase.
was 100% on him. John
Yeah,
Harbaugh, why do you
you
follow
take
the
the points.
analytics? You have Justin Tucker.
You
Let
take the
him
points.
kick the field goal. Let's get the 3 points. Don't
Hmm.
force Lamar into, risking his body, risking his life on a
Yeah.
fourth down where the Bills defense was playing amazing in the second half. The Bills
Yeah.
defense was crazy in the second half, right?
Well,
Don't
hold on.
put
I'm going to
Lamar in that
interrupt you.
situation. Take the points, and
Yeah.
then you won't. You know what? That gives confidence to the defense because then the defense is like, okay, our coaches trust us to make a stop. And now you have Josh Allen go back across the field like some 90-yard, 10
Yeah.
5-minute drive, game-winning field goal. Like, come on, man, that's gonna come
Yeah.
back to bite us
Yeah.
in the ass. And then you
Well,
have one of our guys, Marcus Peters, who's snapping at the coach, and I think rightfully so. I was pissed, man. I was
well,
angry.
and I think it goes beyond just the
Okay?
one play on the 4th and 1.
Yes.
If you look at the box score, you realize that Buffalo figured out a reasonably one-dimensional offense by halftime, right?
Yes.
And if you look at the box score for Lamar Jackson, you see the same recipe again, where they have him running. I mean, he didn't get his 100 this time, but he got 70 plus. But what didn't happen was he didn't get all the completions and touchdowns like he did the previous 2-3 weeks. Their luck basically ran out against a better defense,
Yes.
and I believe that is on Harbaugh. Either
Yes.
he doesn't have the players or he doesn't have the ideas, one of the two. But they need to get that fixed because Lamar's either going to get injured or they're going to start losing a lot of close games, games they should win because defenses are just teeing up on them and they're just going to figure it out.
Yes, that goes back to our earlier discussion about defenses developing. I think defenses are a lot faster this generation.
Hmm.
So you'll have a
Yes.
linebacker who's gonna be really, really quick, and the defense, the DBs are quick. Jordan Poyer had a game versus
Mm,
the Ravens. He had two
he
picks and he
sure
was
did.
dominating. He was
Yep.
going crazy. And that's what my Ravens and John Harbaugh and Greg Roman, our offensive coordinator, they need to adjust and see, hey, they're starting to read Lamar. Okay,
Yep.
let's give the rock to J.K. Dobbins in the backfield.
Who
Let's
had two
do some
touchdowns.
screen passes. Yeah, J.K. Dobbins was on fire.
Return of J.K. Dobbins for a certain. He didn't get all the yards he should have, but he definitely
Right.
was like. It looked like he was ready to start running again.
My man,
He
I
was
had
over.
him on the bench in fantasy. I'm so pissed.
So it goes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Dobbins looked like he was over whatever was holding him back, but he just didn't get enough. Didn't get enough feeds on it. So I mean, what are you going to do? But they figured out. They figured out what Baltimore was doing, and they teed him up in the second half. And if you look at the box score, you see it. It's all written there.
And that comes to adjustments in the second half,
Yeah.
and that's goes back to coaching. That goes
Yep.
back to coaching. Literally, if you have a good coach, they're gonna adjust in the second half because they were getting whooped in the first half. But I'm telling you, the Bills. Talking about the Bills, something interesting that we wanna, we've been talking about since the beginning of this podcast. Our MVP tracker, right
Hmm.
now. Josh Allen didn't have a Superman crazy game like he normally
No, he
does.
didn't.
He didn't throw for 60 something times, which is insane, by the way, but he was effective. And I think on the MVP ladder, we gotta put him up right now. How's it looking on your MVP watch list?
Well,
What do you think, man?
yeah, Josh Allen, did not have as prolific a week as he has, as we've seen of him. But
Yeah.
that's the thing that really stood out to me was the 70 yards rushing again. And I saw him grab, a couple of, did a couple of those runs were very necessary and very dominant. We were talking about 10, 12, 15-yard runs. So like
Yeah.
he's chunking it out there. So he was very effective in that way because that's the way he needed to play.
Mhm.
But yeah, his resume took a little bit of a hit. Jalen Hurts probably had the most dominant of the top three that we've been talking about. But
Yeah.
the one that we didn't mention that should be in the conversation now, of course, is Patrick Mahomes, who's slowly
Right.
creeped up to the fourth ranked QB in the league now behind our top three there.
Yes.
So, but it's still Lamar Jackson, followed by Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, and then and Mahomes. So it looks pretty much as you would expect it would.
Yes.
Yep. And but interesting you mentioned Kyler Murray because he's at number 5, I believe, or
Oh,
number
they're putting
6. So yeah,
yeah.
Mr. Backyard Ball still man, with the raised eye. That was classic.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, the one raised eye. When I was surprised myself, I had to double check it. I was like, wait, what? That doesn't make sense. So yeah. Let me just double check it for you. I'm lying. Jeff Goff is at number 5, but Kyler Murray's right behind him, 1 point behind.
Okay. I was about to say, man,
Where's Goff?
really? Like after that performance he had, I was like, whoa.
I know,
I
but
put Geno Smith up there because Geno Smith went crazy against the
oh
Lions. I was like,
boy,
what the hell?
oh
Geno
boy,
Smith for like 300 yards, 70% completion percentage. I'm like, who
he
is
looked
this
like
guy? He's
he looked
playing
like
better than Russ.
he looked like Russell Wilson from 5 years ago. Is what he looked like. Right?
Yes.
Remember my comment for the first podcast?
I remember.
Buddy knows how to throw a spiral. I couldn't even remember his name in the moment. It's been that long since I've heard from Geno Smith. But I remember
Yes.
him at West Virginia. I remember him in New York struggling with that terrible franchise. But now he's actually got some people behind him, and he's had
Yeah.
3 or 4 years at least, I think, to learn the program under Pete Carroll, and he sure looked like it. Oh my goodness! For them to go on the road like that and take a moribund passing game and running game and bring it up to 45 points on the road.
On the
And
road, man.
and when the defense did need to play, that one moment when the defense did need to play, they showed up and did it. But that was an absolutely remarkable game. That was the most that reminded me of like those old AFC West games I talk about with Dan Fouts and all those guys back in the late 70s and 80s, where it was just where's the defense? Like, who cares, right? It's
Who
a very
cares about
entertaining,
defense?
right?
Let's just throw it up. Someone's out there.
Over 1,000 yards of offense, evenly split between both teams. A remarkable game,
Wow.
And to see the return of DJ Metcalf, whose nickname, of course, now has to be Dookie Metcalf.
Yeah, taking the shit.
Right? Leave it on the cart. That was comedic. You watch the game long enough, you'll see something new. And then, but also too, right? We saw both of. He had like 147 yards though, and
Yes.
Penny ran for 151.
Ooh.
Yeah. So I mean. Even Lockett, I think, had close to 100 yards. So it was a
Yes.
remarkable, and very entertaining football game. As
You
long
know,
as you're not a defense aficionado.
no. Both the coordinators need to get fired. But
Yeah.
we will start off by saying this. That was an entertaining game. If you love fantasy like we do,
Yep.
y'all
Yep.
should have had picked up Rashad Penny. I checked all my leagues. He was already taken by the
Well,
time I picked him up.
well,
But Jamal
I
Williams
dropped him.
played great. DK played great. Geno Smith, shock of the season, really, because he's
Yeah.
put on some quality wins so far. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, okay,
Yeah. Geno Smith's a veteran player.
right. And then you have
You
a guy
know.
like Jared Goff, who's out there slinging it too. But in my mind, I'm thinking like the Detroit Lions, they put up a ton of points, but they give up a ton of points. That's why they're
Yeah.
1-3, I believe. But
Yeah. Yeah. Their defense.
somebody who's out putting up a lot of points is Baker Mayfield, man. I've been meaning to talk about this. We haven't talked about the Panthers much. I know we
Mhm.
haven't, and I try to touch on these topics, but people are thinking it's Sam Darnold time. What are your thoughts, man? For me, I think they got to pump the brakes. It's a week 4 going into
Well,
week 5. What do you think, man?
Well, I just think that you brought in Baker Mayfield because you were so disappointed with Sam Darnoldson. But just how much worse could it be, right? This
Right.
is like 2 weeks in a row now where he's thrown at like a 50% level on not that many passes, like 27, less than 30 passes, I believe. And Mayfield, to me, he looks immobile.
Yeah.
He's very inefficient. A couple of picks, one, more interceptions than TDs, right?
Yes.
That type of trend. I mean, that's just garbage stuff. And worse, he's making DJ Moore look terrible. That one interception that he threw, that DJ Moore basically just relayed the ball to the secondary by tipping it off. But if you look, I've watched that play 3-4 times in a row.
Right.
Mayfield threw behind him by a yard or so, and Moore was desperately trying to get a hand on it to do one of those spectacular catches with one hand, like he's probably capable of doing.
Oh,
But
definitely.
instead, it just bounced off his hand into the cornerback. So that's just unlucky, but it's also a very poor throw. He had lots
Absolutely.
of space. and he couldn't lead the receiver. He was throwing behind him. And at this stage in his career, I think that's we should be expecting more Baker Mayfield than that.
We definitely should, because you're the number one overall pick. Now, look, if Baker
Yeah.
was a second rounder, be like, okay, like it's fine. We don't expect that much from you. If Baker
Mhm.
Mayfield was like a Geno Smith, like a journeyman, it's
Yep.
okay. You know what I mean?
But
But
the
right now,
expectations are
Baker
higher.
Mayfield is getting outplayed by Cooper Rush,
Mhm.
getting
Yep.
outplayed by a ton of guys you'd expect. What?
A lot of guys. He's
A
one of the worst
lot
in the
of
league as far as
guys.
I'm concerned. I think his play has been terrible, and yeah,
That's the
Carolina's got
thing.
a
People
problem.
in Carolina are calling for for him to be benched. And he even made some comments about, on the press conference, some things kind of going against the fans or something like that. I'm thinking like this, Baker. If he does not perform well coming in this week, I think Matt Rule is gonna have to put Sam Darnold in, but it's gonna look really dumb, because if you're Matt Rule and you're the Carolina Panthers organization, you
Mhm.
brought Baker in, right?
Yep.
Because you're not believing in Sam Darnold. And if you keep flip-flopping like this, you're gonna lose the locker room. And
Well,
this Panthers team is actually talented. I checked the guys they have on
they
defense.
are talented.
They have the guys. They just need to put it together. And
Yeah.
and maybe that's a larger conversation about the coaching, but I don't know. What are your thoughts, man?
Well, ever since Cam Newton left, that steady presence that he was, well, whatever you
Right.
thought about Cam Newton at the end of his days in Carolina, he gave them several seasons of outstanding quarterback play and
Absolutely.
leadership. And Baker Mayfield has not come in and done that.
No.
Sam Darnold did not do that after he was with New York first, if I remember correctly,
Yeah,
right? He got
he
bounced.
was with the Jets, and then they got rid of him to get Zach
Right.
Wilson.
So Sam Darnold is quickly looking like a guy who can't catch on and can't play at the NFL level. Again, speaking about that mediocrity,
Oh yes.
Baker Mayfield came in, as you said, like a first round pick, celebrated guy, and he was supposed to overcome his lack of size by his, mobility, his dynamic play, and all that type of stuff. We're seeing none of that. So yeah,
None.
I think you can put it on the quarterback play. And what happens though when you go flip flopping back and forth like that is that both quarterbacks lose confidence. Now you got two QBs who are like second guessing themselves. It's not a good coaching maneuver. That's like the dog, the tail wagging the dog when you're just
Right.
just reverting back to the quarterback that you bounced and reverted to second tier status in favor of the free agent that you brought in. But that free agent is failing, so you're going to go back to the original guy after like 4 games. That shows a lack of confidence in your game plan, your management. It sends a terrible message to the players, and yeah, you are going to end up with a divided locker room.
You have a divided locker room, and I'm gonna say it like this, man. I never liked Matt Rule, the current
Mm-hmm.
Panthers coach, and I always thought that they did Ron Rivera dirty. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
How they got
yeah.
rid of him like that.
I'm a
Ron
big
and
Rivera fan, and I love what he did
I
in
was a big
Carolina.
fan.
And I
Yeah.
just think that they did him dirty, is right.
They did him so dirty, and now the Commanders, they look like garbage. Carson Wentz, garbage. I'm thinking Matt Rule might be the first coach to get out of here if the Broncos head coach doesn't get out of here first. And
Doesn't get out of there first.
now let's talk about tonight's game, man. We have the
Sure.
Colts versus the damn Broncos, man. What is going on with the Broncos, man? Because I'm a Russell Wilson fan, man. I'm a fan
Yeah.
of him, right? And it's like, wow, what is this offense right now? Like, and then you look at the Colts. This on paper, the Colts should be flying through their division, and now the Jags are number one in the division. I looked at Vegas odds. Jags are expected to win that division, the
Mm-hmm.
AFC South. And I'm
Yeah.
like, what? Who would have thought? Good coaching, man. Come back to what we've been talking about this whole podcast so far. The
Peterson.
coaching is superior. Frank
Mm-hmm.
Reich might be out of here. Let's say the Colts lose 3 more games. Who's to say Frank Reich might not get fired? Who's to say Hackett might not get fired? You lost to the goddamn Raiders. The Raiders, man. You lost to Derek Carr, bruh.
Yeah.
Derek
Yeah.
MFing Carr. Anyways,
Yeah.
that's my
Needless to
rant.
say, I'm less than excited about tonight's matchup. I do have a couple notes on it here, though. Let me just find them under my lines section here.
Yeah.
Yeah, tonight's game, I've got Denver covering that just as the home team. It's only 2.5 points. They're only expecting 42 points. So we're looking at like, a 22-19 game or some kind of clinker like that.
Yeah.
And I'm just unimpressed with Russell Wilson so far. People are starting to say that, Denver got got hoodwinked pretty bad, and that Seattle actually came out better on top of that, and that Pete Carroll's looking kind of wily right now. Because basically they had a Russell Wilson prototype from 2017-18 sitting on the bench the whole damn time. Like,
Right.
better
Gino's
sweeten that
looking
deal.
good.
Russell's so important to us. And Denver's looking like they got a guy who's kind of washed. He's looking very washed, even though he had a better game this weekend.
I think honestly, if you really think about it, I personally don't think Russ is washed like that. I just think there's the play calling, the designs, because Russ has had flashes. I've watched some of the games. He's actually looked like old school Russ, but it's like when they let him
last game in
run.
particular.
Yeah, last game in particular, they let him run a little bit. They let him almost take over. I just think Hackett, their coach, is just doing a disservice. And how can his offense win when Melvin Gordon is fumbling the ball all the time? Did you see that fumble that returned for a touchdown? Like, what was that?
His hands look greasy right now. Like the ball is just slipping right out. It's terrible. Because he used to have very sure hands. He used to be very sure at the goal line. So that's a problem because with Javonte out for the season, and you've got a rookie on the bench, I think Moore, and Melvin Gordon not looking at his best, that simply puts that much more pressure on Wilson to be able to put out 50 plus 75 yards rushing to complement that running game. Is he capable of doing that? I'm not sure. But you're right. He can still throw a ball. It's not like he's completely, maybe in this system he looks washed. Maybe that's a better, more accurate way to put it. But he looks bad right now. It looks like Denver got hoodwinked in that trade at this point.
At this point, I agree. And they gave Russ a new contract right after, like right in the offseason when he signed up. So he's going to be at Denver for some time. But something I wanted to touch on that I think was kind of interesting, little sub-story, little subplot happening, right? Talking about quarterbacks. Cooper Rush, man. Cooper Rush. What's that? The Cowboys. He's on a run right now. And there were reports that Dak was going to try to come back on Sunday. I think we know why.
He's feeling antsy.
He's feeling antsy. He's feeling that heat that Tony Romo was feeling a few years ago. You know what I'm saying? Because it might turn to that because Cooper Rush is looking very good in this system. He's standing confident in the pocket. No turnovers, really. He hasn't thrown a pick, I believe. Hasn't even fumbled the ball. That's all you need. You just let the defense take over. Score maybe one touchdown. Don't turn over the ball. Convert on third downs. We good.
I think that Dallas is on a bit of a rush right now because aren't they 4-0 or 3-1? I think I'm pretty sure they're 4-0. Are they?
They're 3-1 last time I checked. I'm gonna check who they're playing next, but they're doing really, really well, man. Yeah.
And so anyways, but I think that your first reaction when you look at Cooper Rush's numbers is that, it's got to be the defense, right? That pass rush is what's getting it done and stuff. But if you look at the fantasy stats, Dallas's defense is only number 9. So it's a quality D, but it's not like it's top 5 or something like that at this point anyways. But they're looking very competent. They're getting turnovers and the like. And Cooper Rush is keeping a clean sheet. So whatever you want to describe it, however it's working, it is working. I don't think that Cooper Rush is necessarily that electrifying. I think what he is, though, is a winner.
Yes, he is.
I think he is one of those guys who's a winner. And he, understands what he needs to do to stay mistake-free and enable the win to happen as a member of the team. So that's kind of a unique talent, I think, that exists with Cooper Rush, certainly at first glance over these first 4 games. But I resist the urge to see him as capable of putting Dak out of a job. But I do believe that Dallas has something of quality going on there right now, and he's an integral part of it because as a game manager or whatever you want to call him, his level of competence allows the other 10 players and the 11 on the other side to do their jobs. And I'm impressed by that.
I'll say this: Cooper Rush gives me remember Nick Foles when he came in for Wentz for that Super Bowl run?
Sure do.
You need a guy like that, a competent backup who can get you a little bit over the edge. And talking about backups, this is the last thing we're gonna hit on, last week's games, and then we're gonna move on to this week's games. Jimmy G, man. Jimmy G versus the Rams, right? I don't know, bro. I don't know what's up with Jimmy G. He'll give you a safety the week last week, and then he'll win you a game the next week. I don't get it. I don't get the
Yeah.
math. I don't
That,
understand the logic. But Jimmy G, like we just talked about Cooper Rush, he's a winner.
yeah,
And sometimes you just need a winner. You don't necessarily need a goddamn amazing prodigy. Like look at Aaron Rodgers. He
yeah,
struggled against New England. But look at Jimmy G. Jimmy G is making the Niners real Super Bowl contenders, especially
yeah.
that pack defense. What are your thoughts, man? Before we
Well,
move
I
to
was
this
going
week.
to say to me the story in that game was the defense,
Yeah.
the way they played. I think they had like 5 sacks on Stafford,
Yes.
and I think that LA kind of played themselves out of that game. But I'm not taking anything away from San Francisco because of that
Right.
defense, and also because Jimmy G, for heaven's sakes, that guy's relationship with Deebo Samuels, they were half the offense. The two of them together were
Yes.
half the offensive output. Um, but they're covering the other, they're doing just fine on the running game.
Right.
Um, and he is just sitting back in that pocket and just finding it, like we talked about last week. Even though we picked that game wrong,
We
we thought
picked it
LA
wrong, man. We picked the Rams.
we figured, LA would get it through, but we underestimated that San Francisco defense. But
Yes.
Jimmy G did his part and just kept completing passes and slinging it too, right? Downfield passes,
Slinging
20
it.
plus.
You know?
So yeah, like what I was hinting at last week with Garoppolo is that
Right.
if you give him a good line and some people who can catch the ball, he can really do a lot for you just with his sheer consistency.
I agree.
He's going to play mistake free. So if you've got the other aspects covered, Jimmy G is going to give you a lot of value, and he is right now. But
Fully agree.
That San Francisco G is the one I really want to get all over, man. That was amazing stuff to me. Also, too,
Yes.
Shanahan's 7th win in a row against the
Yes.
Rams. So
Against
he's
the
kind of
Rams is
got their
like,
number. But San Francisco defense and special teams is number 2,
oh,
certainly
on
by
fantasy? Is that how
Yahoo
they're looking?
metrics.
Nice.
And they did lights out with that pick six at 6:28 left in the fourth
Yes.
quarter,
Yep.
just to seal the game, just to like pull their heart out and eat it, right? So the
Right.
defense did exactly what you want to do, and that is like make the other team feel like they can't win, and they sure got that message good and strong in the second half. That was just embarrassing. I think that was another night of it's kind of like Brady's night. When he had, just he relied on Ryan Sukup to give him, 4 field goals because he couldn't score one,
Couldn't
right?
even
So
score
I don't
one,
think
man.
I'm pretty sure that LA did not even score a touchdown in that game. I think it was just all
No.
field goals.
LA was completely shut out, and Matt Stafford, my
Hmm.
bad. Stafford had like 3 picks, but let's just quickly, quick, touch on some fantasy booms and maybe some busts. Boom, I
Sure.
believe that people should really invest into J.K. Dobbins. I think he's a great pickup. That Chiefs running back, his name is Isaiah Pacheco.
Yeah.
He takes Kyrie's no, sorry, Tyreek's old number. So he's number 10. He was balling out of control. And in terms of quarterback, Jared Goff, another boom guy. A lot of busts, obviously, but those are some booms. What are some busts in your eyes? Some people who have not been playing the best, or maybe what some booms that people might not expect on a fantasy perspective, man.
Right. I've got a couple down here.
Yeah,
On wide receiver, I'm kind of disappointed with Amari Cooper. I
I
expected
agree.
him to do better, but he's not even a top 100 player in our league right now.
No.
I was disappointed with DJ Metcalf until last week, but I think better things are ahead there.
Yes.
Um, Michael Thomas is disappointing, but also the guy that I really have been biased towards over the last couple of years that I think is an excellent receiver, and he's not getting anything like what he should be getting right now, and that's Terry McLaurin in Washington.
Oh,
There's a guy I
yes.
expected to be sort of like a top 10 or 15 receiver, and it's nothing close to it.
Yeah.
But who's down also is like Mariota. Even with my lowered expectations for Mariota, I expected better numbers out of him, but he's got good players around him. I think that Mariota is still going to manage to get more wins this year than you expected out of Atlanta. So
I
I'm not
agree. Yeah.
putting out on him yet. Wide receivers are looking pretty much as you expect them to be: Cups, Diggs, Hill, and Jefferson up top.
Yes.
Miles Sanders looked last week like a fantasy guy who's ready, I should say, ready and willing to put up some good points. We thought that was going to be running back by committee, but if last weekend was any
He's
indication,
RB1 for now. Yep.
Miles Sanders is looking like your RB1 right now. So
Yes.
that's a bit of a boom right now. Although it's not really surprising, it is a bit of a boom because I thought it would be like evenly split every week. I really did, because Gainwell, Scott, and Sanders are all very good runners. But beyond that, yeah, pickups. Some guys that I would suggest as pickups, though, to take that a little bit further, because I hate trashing on people, and I hate
Me
saying
neither.
so-and-so's a
It's less
bust,
fun, but we can
because
just,
in
there's some
the
gems
end, they're
out
going to
there.
come up, in the end, they're going to do something for you eventually, right? I mean, that's just the
Right.
nature of the NFL. But looking at pickups for this week, because that's the thing I'm kind of interested to see with some of the injuries, who might be able to fill some of these spots.
Yes.
And the big one is going to be Cordarrelle Patterson in Atlanta. And I think that guy's going to be that Algier fella. He was incredibly efficient on 10 carries. He got 84 yards. So that guy was just slashing when he ran. So I think with more reps, you might see that guy perform very well in that Cordarrelle Patterson role. Plus, he can receive.
Nice.
Pickens, as I mentioned earlier,
I'm a big fan of Pickens.
Pittsburgh.
Yes.
Yeah, as the receiver, not Pickett, the QB, but Pickens, the
Pickens,
receiver.
the receiver. Yeah.
Yeah, he's kind of supplanting Claypool in
Claypool had that miss, but Pickett had that bad throw. It was not a good throw. And quadruple coverage. But Claypool is not. He's maybe a fantasy disappointment. But I wanna touch on one thing before we're a little pressed for time. And guys, keep in mind next week we're gonna have longer podcasts. I heard y'all feedback. We will have it a bit longer. Before we end off this podcast, what is your game of the week? We didn't have a lot of time to talk about lines and spreads, but as we look into the next week, right, of football, is there a game that's interesting for you that you really like? For me personally, the Chiefs versus the Raiders. I think that's going to be very interesting to me. I think it's going to be very
51 points
competitive.
as the over-under.
Yeah, the
51 points.
Yeah, Chiefs are very much over, man. They're minus 100. They should be 110 actually. But I'm interested in this what's this other game? It was the Cowboys versus the Rams. Let's see if the Rams can come back. But with a few minutes left, even like 1 minute left, what's a game that interests you, Unc? What's something that you're looking forward to? Potential game of the week.
Game of the week, interesting, but I think I like the Dallas LA game because I want to see what Dallas is going to do. But I also am very curious, just from a betting perspective, talking about lines on two games. One of them is the New York Giants versus Green Bay, because they're giving Green Bay at home 7.5 points against this seemingly pretty competent New York Giants team. And I don't think that Green Bay is 7.5 points better than anybody right now. So I'm looking at that as an upset. Also, Seattle on the road against New Orleans after what we saw Seattle do last week. I think they're giving them too many points. 6.5 to 5.5, I think is the line in favor of New Orleans. I might go with 2.5 and say, okay, New Orleans wins maybe. But I think that Seattle's coming to bring the house, and I think they're gonna cover that spread.
Be a good one. I love it.
And one more on top of that is the Atlanta Tampa Bay game, because there's another huge line, 8.5 to 9 points against Atlanta. Atlanta's on the road for sure and everything like that. But I don't see Tampa Bay squashing anybody by almost 10 points.
Nah, man. Appreciate y'all. Gonna tap in next time. Thanks for the pod. Appreciate you, Unc.
All right. Next time.
We out.
All right. Bye-bye now.